There was some controversy this week involving former AEW star Ryan Nemeth and allegations of abuse and neglect during his time in the company, much of it centered around one CM Punk. This company just cannot seem to quit this guy. Whether it's Tony Khan airing brawl-in footage on his television show earlier this year or other people bringing his name up. You know, you could argue the best and the worst thing that Tony Khan ever did was hiring CM Punk. He reaped the business rewards of his hiring, and he did his first $1 million gate with him in the main event, but his company has never been the same since that brawl-out scrum in Chicago. A piece of that company's soul died that night. The reason he's back in the news is because Fightful obtained a copy of a formal complaint sent to AEW executives on September 12th of this year. Whether it was Nemeth himself who leaked it to them or somebody in the company, I don't know. But in the complaint, Nemeth laid out a detailed timeline of events, supported by emails, text messages, and call logs that paint a terrible picture of how things are handled behind the scenes in AEW, or at least how they were handled back then. One would hope that changes have been made since then. Sean Ross Sapp says there have been. I would hope so, but time will tell. According to the report, Nemeth's issues allegedly began in April of 2023 when he contacted then AEW legal representative Mega Parek to express concerns about being targeted by CM Punk. This was 2 months before Punk returned on Collision. They say his first appearance since Brawl Out. This is 2 months before that. Now, Nemeth was tight with the Young Bucks. He might still be. He was tight with that whole crew. And he feared potentially being targeted in some way by Punk, if and when he came back. And he claims that he went to management about it. And he claims that these fears were realized on June 21st, 2003, when Punk threatened him in a locker room incident. And while Nemeth says people like Parek and Tony Schiavone and Jon Moxley and the Young Bucks all expressed support for him, he felt the company failed to respond appropriately. So just to put a pause on this for a second and just refresh everyone's memory, because I talked about this at length after it happened. The night that Punk came back, he made a comment in his promo about people being soft. All right, that was the promo where he said David Zaslav calls him One Bill Phil, and he made that counterfeit Bucks comment in reference to the Young Bucks without actually naming them. But that comment about other people being soft is what set off Nemeth. In his mind, he felt, Punk just missed 9 months with a torn triceps, and his first night back, he's calling other people soft. And he just thought that was incredibly hypocritical. And so he famously tweeted out, literally the softest man alive, without ever mentioning Punk by name, although it was very clear who he was referring to. Now, he claims he's under a gag order of some kind over what happened next, but when he's been interviewed about this previously, he's claimed that he tweeted that out as a heel. He says he was in character. Punk is the returning babyface. He was a heel. They both worked for the same company. This guy gets injured more than anybody else alive, and his first night back, he calls someone soft. That was his logic. But he tweeted what he did in character. That's what he claims. Okay, I think he's full of shit. I think he knew exactly what he was doing when he tweeted that and what the reaction would probably be. And it's not like Nemeth was ever going to work with Punk. I mean, he was barely ever on television. The popcorn guy in the stands that night got more airtime on TBS than Ryan Nemeth ever did. So I don't know if he was trying to work a program out of it for himself or what he was trying to do. But he was a heel, and in his mind, he felt that he had no choice but to call him out for being a hypocrite. So that tweet is what led to the incident backstage at Dynamite the following week, where Punk angrily confronted him. And Wade Keller reported in The Torch at the time that, according to several eyewitnesses in the locker room, Punk cornered Nemeth and got up in his face asking if they had a problem and if they needed to step outside to settle things. Now, mind you, this man just came back after being suspended for a giant backstage brawl. And his second week back, he's ready to throw down with somebody. So they move things out into the hallway, and Punk is still berating him, and Nemeth is trying to defend himself, verbally. And Punk said he thought the timing of the tweet was bad because it went against the image that they were trying to portray, that everybody was back on the same page, and or at least nobody was doing anything to make an already bad situation even worse. Again, he says that after going out on TV and taking a not so subtle dig at the Young Bucks. Okay, whether you think it was deserved or not, that's not really the point. But the idea that he would have been upset about Nemeth exacerbating the situation from a tweet after he just went out on live television and said what he said, I just find that hilarious. So Nemeth asks Punk if he shouldn't react to things that Punk says on TV anymore, and Punk says, yeah, that would probably be for the best. And supposedly they shook hands and they parted ways, and that was the end of it, or so he thought. Because what followed was him being kept off AEW programming for the next 2 months after that incident. During which time, he claims, Jon Moxley reached out to him, expressing his discomfort with the situation and offering his support. Nemeth, though, feared that what was happening is that he was being silently fired. Then, on August 12th, 2023, Nemeth was booked for an AEW show in Greensboro, but claims that he was asked to leave upon arrival at the venue, reportedly at the insistence of CM Punk. And Pat Buck, who worked for AEW, he initially cited travel confusion as the cause, but then later on he confirmed that Punk, he was the reason, he was involved. And Nemeth says that he has an audio recording of the interactions from that day. He's got the receipts. This next part, though, is not getting enough attention. This is the part of this report that really just jumped out at me, and I just feel like it's not getting enough attention. Nemeth returned to AEW on August 16th, where he says that he was ordered to verbally antagonize Punk in a live promo. He expressed concerns to legal and HR, but felt no action was taken. This coincided with the departure of Mega Perek from AEW Legal, leaving Nemeth to deal with Chris Peck and Margaret Stalvey, whom he accuses of stonewalling his concerns. If that is true, that he was ordered, in his words, to antagonize CM Punk on live television, first of all, Punk doesn't exactly need a lot of antagonizing to begin with, right? He's been on his best behavior this year with WWE. Although for a lot of it, he was injured, he wasn't even at the shows. But he's been a model citizen by all accounts so far, right? He's already a year in now to this WWE run, and it's just been kumbaya, everything's been great. And look, I hope that continues. He's a big draw for the company. They can make lots of money together. There's a lot of big matches, including him against Roman Reigns, him against Seth Rollins, him against Kevin Owens. A lot of big money matches they could do. I wish that was the case with him in AEW still, and all this shit never happened. But let's not pretend like this is a guy who needs a lot of antagonizing, okay? He's got a hair trigger. He's easily set off by words. And he has a history of then later apologizing to people. He apologized to Tony Khan after Brawl Out. He apologized to The Miz years later for telling him to go suck a blood-covered dick in Saudi Arabia. He supposedly apologized to Hangman Page by text message after calling him a peg warmer, because there was either a sign in the crowd that he saw or there was a fan who shouted something. I think it may have been a sign that said, "This is Hangman Country," or something, and then he said what he said. So much for not wanting to exacerbate things, by the way. So he apologized to him for that. Like, you don't apologize constantly to people unless there's some recognition that maybe things were said that should not have been said. But in any event, I have to defend Punk on this, because if there are people in that company telling Ryan Nemeth to go out and poke the bear, those people need to lose their fucking jobs. And it just proves what I said from the start of all this 2 years ago, which is that there are no innocent parties here. Not CM Punk, not Tony Khan, not anybody. It's no wonder Punk lost his mind working for these people. Following Punk's physical altercation with Jack Perry at All Out 2023, the report says Nemeth claims he was asked to participate in an external investigation, but felt that AEW was more focused on determining Punk's future than addressing any of his grievances. Nemeth's timeline notes repeated pitches for his creative return from Sanjay Dutt, all of which he says went ignored. By November 18th, 2023, Nemeth worked his final AEW match. He believes that AEW management held him responsible for the fallout involving Punk, whose firing came shortly before Nemeth's last appearance. Nemeth alleges that AEW Legal offered him a settlement equal to 3 years of salary, contingent on signing an NDA. He says he wanted to negotiate the offer with his legal team, but it was abruptly withdrawn. Peck allegedly warned Nemeth he would be placed in an antagonistic position against Parekh if the matter escalated to arbitration, despite Nemeth maintaining a positive relationship with her. And that's a whole other weird situation, the way that Mega Parekh was just removed from her position in AEW. She was basically moved elsewhere within the Jaguars organization. She works for the Jaguars, but she has no connection at all anymore to AEW. We still don't know why. We don't know what that was all about. That's a whole weird situation. Nemeth claims Peck also threatened legal action over his formal complaint and timeline submission. Despite this, Nemeth remains steadfast in his call for policy changes within AEW, seeking a safer working environment for the roster. The toll of the experience led Nemeth to seek help from mental health professionals. While Tony Khan reportedly entertained the idea of Nemeth returning, the former AEW star has no intention of going back. Instead, Nemeth hopes his case sparks meaningful change within AEW, stating the roster deserves a safe environment. Did Kevin Kelly have to seek like a therapist or something after his time working there? What is going on in this company that all these people have to seek out mental health professionals after working there? What is going on here? Look, if Nemeth has audio recordings and documentation and text messages, apparently he does, to back up his claims, I'm sure that helps his case, and that paints a pretty damning picture. But it's the part about being told to intentionally antagonize Punk on TV that I can't get away from that. That just raises a huge red flag if it's true about the people who work there and how they handle things behind the scenes. Like, imagine somebody backstage in WWE telling Giovanni Vinci to go out on television. I could have stopped right there. The idea of Vinci even being on TV is too unbelievable. But just pretend for a second. Somebody tells Vinci to go out on TV and antagonize Roman Reigns. Like, never in a million years would you see something like that. And if it did happen, everybody involved would be looking for a job. Like, why would you want to provoke the man unless you wanted him to go off the deep end and get himself fired? Like, what other conclusion can be drawn from that? I mean, it goes back to the spring of 2023 when Punk was still out after Brawl Out. And this is what he talked about with the Ariel Helwani interview. And he told Tony Khan, look, they don't want me here. People don't want me here. This is never going to work. Just release me. And Tony stood his ground and he said no, because he knew that he needed Punk for Collision. He needed him for Collision to be a success. Collision was contingent on Punk being the star of the show. It was built around him. And Tony thought that he could keep the peace by just separating everybody like children. You go to your room and you go to your room. You can't run a daycare center that way, let alone a wrestling company. You know, when Punk went on Ariel's show earlier this year and he said that he told Tony, release me. This isn't a real business. It's not a real business predicated on making money and selling tickets, right? This is not what you sold it to me as. I saw that as him largely being upset that the Young Bucks did not want to turn the whole Brawl Out situation into an angle and make money off of it. They wouldn't even sit down in a room with him to take a meeting. And I said, you can't say that AEW is not a real business when they just signed a $600 million media rights deal, or when they put 70,000 fans in Wembley Stadium. But even after everything that went down, if you had people backstage in positions of power trying to provoke him into something, you know what? Punk wasn't completely wrong. That doesn't sound like the way you run a real business.